Hello, good morning, my wonderful people. The news you're about to watch is from the analysis of Seun Okinbaloye of Channel News Television. This one, they analyzing the prospect and the people that are planning for the interim government in Nigeria. My dear people, this one no be joke again. This one, you don't pass to be careful because they said if a snake refuse to do like snake, that more children they could use them do belt. So as it stands now, the country is in a total dismay. I be disarray. That is everywhere about the kata kata. So my people, I would like you to listen to this very analysis of Seun Okinbaloye of Channel News Television. I'll be right back to give you all the news headlines of how the thing one take waka. So my people, if you never subscribe to my channel as you're watching this, please make sure you subscribe and turn on.
Thank you, Seun. Good evening. I am Kayla Megwa, and these are your political roundup stories for today. The Cross River State Governor-elect, Mr. Basi Otu, is promising to run an inclusive government for the betterment of the people of the state. He made the promise after he received his certificate of return, along with his running mate and 25 elected members of the State House of Assembly. In Kaduna State, the governor-elect, Mr. Ubasani, has received his certificate of return, along with his running mate and elected members of the House of Assembly in Kaduna State. After receiving his certificate of return, Mr. Sani appealed to those who contested against him in the March 18 governorship election in Kaduna State to join hands with him to move the state forward. At a similar ceremony in Bauchi State, Governor Bala Mohammed received his certificate of return alongside a new deputy governor-elect, Honorable Awal Jato. The certificate was presented by the INEC National Commissioner in charge of Bauchi, Borno, and Yobe, retired Major General Muhammad Alkali. Governor Mohammed, who is returning for a second term in office, promised to accomplish his vision of building a new Bauchi. The Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC, has condemned in strong terms the call and plot to install an interim government in Nigeria. The chairman, Mr. Yabagi Yusuf Sani, told journalists after an emergency meeting of IPAC at its national secretariat in Abuja that the statement by the Department of State Services, DSS, that it has uncovered such a plot by some persons is an attempt to scuttle the nation's democracy and should be condemned by all. He urged the country's intelligence service to name the plotters, arrest and prosecute them in accordance with the laws of the land.
IPAC rejects any attempt to scuttle, subvert, and truncate the nation's emerging democracy by reactionary and retrogressive forces.
The candidate of the All Progressives Congress in the March 18 governorship election in Rivers State, Mr. Tony Cole, has visited the head office of the Independent National Electoral Commission in Port Harcourt, the Rivers State capital, to demand the release of the certified true copies of election results. Mr. Cole, who was at the INEC office in company of the APC State Legal Advisor, DK Ihani Chukwu, and some party members, decried the failure of INEC in Rivers State to release the documents almost 2 weeks after the governorship and House of Assembly elections.
They must release it. It's the right of APC, right of all political parties that went through this process to demand these things so that we can make a case.
An Ogun State High Court in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital, has nullified the suspension of a former Deputy Speaker of the Ogun State House of Assembly, Mr. Dari Kadiri, describing it as unconstitutional. Honorable Justice O.A. Onafo-Wokan ruled in the suit brought before the court that the lawmaker's suspension was an abuse of power and abuse of office by the Speaker, Olakunle Oluomo, the House of Assembly, and the Clerk of the House. Still in Ogun State, the governorship candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the March 18 election, Mr. Ladi Adebutu, has asked his supporters to remain calm and resolute as the party challenges the outcome of the exercise at the tribunal. He made the call in Abeokuta, the state capital, during a meeting with some of his supporters and members of the Conference of Political Parties in the state. Mr. Adebutu is alleging fraud and manipulation of the exercise, which returned the incumbent at the polls. He, however, called for more critical and institutional reforms in the electoral process to ensure its credibility and confidence. The crisis rocking the All Progressives Grand Alliance appears to be deepening as Mr. Victor Oye and Mr. Edozie Njoku engage in a war of words over who is the authentic chairman of the party. Mr. Edozie Njoku told journalists in Abuja that by the judgment of the Supreme Court delivered on the 24th of March 2023, he is the national chairman of the All Progressives Grand Alliance. In a swift reaction, Mr. Victor Oye debunked the claim claim, saying no judgment was delivered by the Supreme Court on the 24th of March, and as such, he remains the national chairman of the All Progressives Grand Alliance. Meanwhile, the All Progressives Congress in Lagos State has condemned what it described as the calls for violence in the aftermath of the governorship election in the state. The party alleged that there are threats being raised by some of the contenders who lost in the race. Spokesperson of the party, Mr. Seun Okinbaloye, told journalists in Lagos that these are part of efforts by some opposition parties to discredit the 2023 general elections, calling it the worst election in the history of the country. According to the party, rather than being the perpetrators as accused, its members were the victims of attacks in different parts of the state.
Our members were mostly the victims of intimidation and violence. Many are still in hospitals where doctors are battling to save their lives.
The candidate of the All Progressives Congress in the March 18 election, Mr. Akanimo Udofia, has vowed to challenge the outcome of the polls over alleged malpractices. Mr. Udofia told a news conference in Abuja that the election was characterized by violence and voter suppression, which negates the contest of ideas and intellect, values and principles expected in a free and fair election. He insists that majority of the results collated by the APC agents clearly indicate that he won the governorship election in Akwa Ibom State.
The candidate that was declared winner by INEC emerged from a very flawed process, and I am willing to put the confidence I have in the judiciary to test by challenging the outcome of the elections in court.
Those are the political roundup stories for today. It's back to you, Seun.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Thank you so much, Kayla, for those stories there. Now, the governors of the All Progressives Congress, APC, have asked the Department of State Services, DSS, to arrest, prosecute those planning to install an interim government. The Progressive Governors Forum chairman, Governor Atiku Bagudu, said it is ironic that some self-serving individuals are unfortunately seeking to sabotage our democratic progress. In a statement by the forum, the governor says that, quote, "We urge all Nigerians to remain vigilant and resist any undemocratic conduct that is capable of undermining our democracy. Our country has done well in promoting democracy, both in Nigeria and elsewhere in the African continent, and it is sad that some unpatriotic elements are nursing the evil plot for interim government, which will amount to subverting our national democratic progress." Well, this is not a breaking story. This is not a story that is unfamiliar with a lot of Nigerians, since it came up on Wednesday when the DSS came out to say there are those who are having clandestine meetings and planning that the major aim is to scuttle the transition process, disrupt the peace of the country, and also get frivolous court orders to frustrate the handing over ceremony. So, I mean, this has raised enormous security concern across the land. A lot of people are speaking about it. In fact, the larger Governors Forum had already spoken about it. IPAC has spoken about it. But those who have criticized the process and the manner of approach of the security agency, and in fact, the way and manner things are going, people are warning the DSS on how to go about it so that it doesn't look like there's a clampdown on opposition voices. But let's look at the security perspective to this one. It means a whole lot coming from the DSS. They must have had their information. Let's hear from a security consultant, Mr. Kabiru Adamu, who joins us virtually. Thank you so much, Mr. Adamu, for joining us tonight. Give us a sense of what this means. There's a lot of concern about it. Governors are speaking about it. Average Nigerians are speaking. Experts are talking about this. How much of a concern do you think this warning coming from the DSS is to the nation? You seem to have muted, Mr. Adamu.
Okay, thank you, Seun, and Iftar Mabruk to the majority of Muslims who are joining us and who are listening. It is indeed a worrisome concern. We are having a nascent democracy, which sadly has a lot of challenges. And some of these challenges have to do with the electoral process itself. Others are the structural imbalances that the country has, both in terms of its constitutional formation and then, of course, the players within all the space, both the political, the economic, and then to an extent even the social space. Now, for an agency which, in terms of the labyrinth that is statecraft, has probably one of the most instrumental roles to play in ensuring internal security in the country, to come out with a statement indicating that it has identified a plot to sabotage the transition process, then it is something that everyone who has invested in our nascent democracy should be worried about, for the simple reason that this government department, which made that statement, has the mandate for uncovering anything that can be considered subversion, that can be considered terrorism, or that can be any act of criminality that can affect the peace and well-being of Nigeria. That agency has the mandate. And now it has come out to say it has identified certain plotters who are hell-bent in truncating our democratic process. Then yes, it's something that should be concerning. And as understandably so, since that statement, virtually every media platform and every political space has been dominated by that statement, for the exact reasons that if this plot, like the DSS has warned, is allowed to take place, then it could affect our nascent democracy. We are celebrating, those who have invested in this democracy, that in this fourth republic, this is probably the longest republic that Nigeria has experienced. So no one, and I want to emphasize that, should have that opportunity or capability to truncate that process. So yes, it is indeed a worrisome development.
So in what the DSS described in that statement, which they released earlier, that's on Wednesday, there are different folds to it. There are the ones that we can see, the ones we cannot see, the clandestine activities, the meetings, hopefully to subvert the transition process. And they also mentioned that they also plan to get court injunction, and they also added the fact that there are also plans to organize orchestrated and well-organized protests across the country that could lead to a violent scenario playing out in the country. So now there are those we see and the things that we do not see. There are those who have also said, look, if the DSS have all of this information, which they've gotten somewhere, why have they not made any arrest for the ones that are seen and the ones that are not seen? Because this is what the governors are asking: arrest and prosecute. How easy is it to do that?
The fact that this is an intelligence organization that has the mandate for intelligence, and for the simple, layman, the simple definition of intelligence is, clarifying the who, the what, the when, the where, and the how. So it is assumed that a government department that has the mandate for these 5 imperatives that I've mentioned, that by the time it comes out with a statement which was categorically clear, we have identified the plotters. Now, it is understandable that the majority of the narrative that we have had is calling on this government department to go ahead and arrest the plotters. Now, at this stage, we do not know if they've made the arrest. They've not made it public. However, if you dissect the statement itself, there are 2 components to the statement that would lead me to reach a conclusion that perhaps that the arrests have not been made. One of them is there is a deterrence statement there saying that specifically calling on politicians who are involved in it to desist. And then the other component, which is I think in the second to the last paragraph, categorize 3 groups: the civil society organizations, the media, and then I keep on forgetting the third group, where it called on them to be mindful of not inadvertently playing into the hands of whoever is behind this plot. Like you rightly indicated, the visible elements of quote and unquote this plot, which may be or may not be, is that we're already seeing protests. Now, most of these protests are being organized by civil society organizations, as it were. Some of them registered, some of them not registered. Or some of the other protests are being organized by individuals who perhaps have affiliations with either political groups or some of them not so political. So clearly, there is that element. The other element, of course, is in the narrative that goes on within the social media space. Let's not forget that there is a significant number of influencers, and we know that some of these influencers are being quote-unquote hired, and some of their narratives incentives for people to come out and do what they've done. So there are so many layers to the possibility behind this plot. And I want to emphasize that it is a theory, at least from the side of those of us who are, assessing it. From the side of the DSS, they have indicated in clear terms that they have identified the plotters. So it is only reasonable that they should go ahead and arrest these plotters. But we must also recognize that the DSS as an organization is an instrument of the state. There are certain elements of its activities that require some form of approval. So as an example, there are certain individuals in this country that if you're going to arrest them because of who they represent and what they do, it's not just a government department that can go ahead and perfect that arrest. It will gather its evidence. It will present that evidence to the coordinators within the intelligence space and then requesting for approval. And I know that in the past, there are certain instances where that approval was not given because of the consequences. And what normally happens in that instance is that there are other avenues for ensuring that those persons, those individuals do not carry on with their activities. Again, I want to emphasize that this is statecraft. In that labyrinth, that maze that represents statecraft, there are certain actions that would require tact, they would require diplomacy, because the objective is to ensure peace and stability of the country and not to create more challenges. So I want to assume in good faith that the DSS has done this. It has gathered its evidence. It has presented that evidence to the coordinators within the intelligence space, and perhaps it has requested for certain approvals, and maybe that approval either has not been granted or it's awaiting that approval. But suffice to say, I agree totally with those that are calling for the arrest of the so-called identified plotters.
Illuminate us tonight, Mr. Kabiru, if you may, with your very deep insight into the workings of security agencies in the country, and perhaps with in comparison to how these operate in some other crimes. Mr. Peter Afuna, in that statement of the DSS, has said that the DSS will use all its arsenals at its disposal to frustrate such plot. Now, those who have dared to say, look, just like we saw in the case of Hush Puppy, that the U.S. government had for several months have been monitoring this young man, and they did not even give him any inkling as to the activities, and they made an alliance with the UAE government in his arrest and the bust that they made, and that is, in fact, almost 2 years. That's what we understand, that they've gone ahead on that class. Those who have dared the DSS to say, look, maybe they don't have the sophistication to carry out these arrests, because we're talking about the dimension or ramification of an offense, which is perhaps one of the highest offense against the state, treason. So if there are people who are committing or planning a plot to subvert the democratic process and uproot a government elected, that is perhaps one of the highest offense in the land. So those school of thought saying maybe our security agent, the DSS, don't have the sophistication to gather evidence and bust these kind of persons. Give us your perspective to this.
In my honest opinion, they do. But I would want to still re-emphasize the point that the DSS is an instrument of the state. It does not operate in a vacuum. It operates as a function of the taskings and directives that it has been authorized to operate in. Yes, it has a mandate, but even when you go back to that mandate, don't forget it was created out of Decree 19 of 1986 under a military era. we've advocated in the past the need to look at that, mandate, as it were, and make it more amenable to our democratic aspirations. And I think this is something that the 10th Assembly, I would strongly urge them. I know the 9th Assembly has tried extensively, but suffice to say that there are certain elements within the space that I may not be necessarily interested in the review of the mandate. But I think it's something that we should, as a country, do to make that organization amenable to our democratic disposition. Now, having said that, you used the example of hush puppy. Now, national interest should be the determining factor, and I'm hoping that we wake up at some point in our history in Nigeria where the workings and the aspirations of both the intelligence and security organizations are determined by our national interest and not necessarily instruments of the state and serving the taskings, as it were, of the government. There are two different things. Now, in terms of the US, I would want us to compare this example you gave, hush puppy, and then the current development regarding the past President Donald Trump. For quite a period now, there has been an attempt, as it were, to arrest him. And you've seen how that discussion has generated a lot of national interest with frankly, a divided country at the moment on whether it is politically motivated or it is actually, a criminal offense. Now, that is what most governments, countries try to avoid. Certain developments, especially if we look at this statement by the DSS coming right after an election that is hugely controversial, suggesting that the conduct and the outcome, as well as the process of the electoral cycle, was deficient in certain areas. And as you're aware, a significant number of the players, especially the four key political parties, are already in court, asking the tribunals to decide one or the other form of the outcome or even the process of the election. Now, all of that would make any action have serious consequences on our national security, especially if the players are in one way or the other involved in that electoral process. The simplest interpretation would be that if at all, for instance, a member of the opposition party is arrested, or someone who is a key supporter of one of the opposition parties is arrested, or even if it's within the ruling party, the simplest interpretation is that it's political. And I think that would create more challenges, as it were, than solve issues. So it's not as simple as that. If we go back to the US, national interest would be put on the table. War games will be played. Different players within the security space will give their perspectives. And then, of course, a briefing will be made to the coordinators within both the security and intelligence space. And then, of course, they will advise Mr. President on what to do. Now, at the end of the day, I want to think that it is national interest that would, have its call at the end of the day. However, sometimes, even when the arrests are not made, there are other options available in this labyrinth that is called statecraft that would serve to achieve the objective. What is the objective here? A plot has been identified, and the primary objective will be to stop the plot. Will arresting the individuals be the solution, or would we have to consider other options? What are the other options? Inviting them in a room as an example, and then dropping the evidence that you have against them, and then leaving them to sweat it out there, and then looking into their eyes and telling them, look, we know what you're up to, and for XYZ reason, we're giving you a last warning. If you proceed, this is what we'll do. So all of these are options within this labyrinth of statecraft that you and I would know if they've been done. But suffice to say that the instrument of statecraft allows the government, in this instance, that is the key player here, several options to pursue.
I mean, it suffices to say that for those who have the who have the opinion or the view that they are asking the capacity of the DSS. Over the years, we've seen the capacity of that security agency. In fact, some would describe them as perhaps one of the most sophisticated around the globe. But finally tonight, on this matter, Mr. Kabiru, I'd like you to give us an understanding of how we can nip this in the bud, considering the fact that this was muted before the election. the idea
Exactly.
of
And
an interim government. And one would be wondering why it has reared its head yet again. I mean, if it's not killed now, how do we deal with it permanently?
Seun, you and I have discussed severally what I have defined as the indicators of electoral deficiency within Nigeria. And thirdly, this is one of the indicators. The average politician in Nigeria goes into the electoral cycle with several arsenals. His or her arsenal sometimes is not limited to, just canvassing for votes through, the developmental challenges that he or she would solve. There will be several other arsenals, including, as an example, using elements to, create some form of, security challenges, as it were. So all of these are indicators of electoral deficiency that we as a people would need to admit and address. It's a good thing that the Department of, or the State Security Service, which is their formal name, have alerted the nation to it. And their principal suspects are politicians, and we've agreed that politicians are capable of doing that. We've also agreed that those indicators that the SSS have suggested at play, we're already seeing samples of them. What we are not seeing is the role of the security departments to de-escalate the situation. As an example, when protesters come out, to the average observer, he sees them converged in a location, but do you take note of the buses that bring them? If you take note of the buses that bring them, who pays for those buses? Or if, for instance, they hire a hall, somewhere like Transcorp, I can't afford the Transcorp. I know how expensive it is, and I doubt if you can afford it. So do we follow those trails to find out who paid for it? I mean, most times, especially in this cashless policy, payments have to be done through electronic transfer. So there is a trail. My point is that the security organizations have the capacity to de-escalate this situation by doing their work, going after the trail, like they say, follow the money. Go after the money, find out who is behind this, and then more importantly, the one that we don't talk about is the surveillance capabilities, especially through the cyberspace. Digital trails are left, if it's through phone calls, if it's through text messages and all of that, and we know that they have the capability to do that. At the end of NSAS, they showed us that they've got that capability.
All right.
So again, this is one area that I would urge them to look into, use surveillance capabilities, use other open source intelligence capabilities, use the human source capabilities, identify this movement, all of these dynamics that are behind it, and de-escalate it. There are ponds. Even if you don't go after the big fish, go after the ponds. And right. by removing the ponds, you are de-escalating the situation.
Kabiru Adamu, Executive Director of Beacon Consulting, security expert. Thank you so much indeed for your thoughts tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We'll take a break, everyone, and when we return, the caller, the Iron Lady, Senator Binta Garba, will be joining me next to discuss women in politics. What has happened to a dwindling representation of women in the National Assembly? We will touch on Adamawa politics, the hanging election, the inconclusive election in that state. Stay with me, everyone. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us on the program. If you look at what is happening globally, it's not only in Nigeria. There is an increasing call for more women to be represented in governance and politics. But in Nigeria, it does look like that trend is suffering some kind of setbacks, considering what we've seen so far. Take, for example, in the election of federal lawmakers into the 10th National Assembly, this is what is playing out. Look at the numbers. There are 17 so far female that have been elected into the National Assembly. So if you look at them, from the House of Rep, okay, so 17 females have won their seats so far in the elections that have been concluded. Senate, there are 3 of them, 14 in the House of Representatives, out of Senate seat of 109 and House of Reps 360. So if you look at what happened in the 9th Assembly in 2019, there are just about 8 women elected into the Senate and 13 into the House of Reps. In fact, House of Reps was a bit better this time around because we have now 14 lawmakers added by 1 in 2023 going into the 10th National Assembly. But in the Senate, it dropped. 3 women will be in the 10th National Assembly, except something changed going forward into the supplementary elections and the conclusion of the elections in areas where the elections have not been concluded. There are those who believe that there is a need for more women to be represented in governance and politics. But why are these numbers dropping? Let's be with a former federal lawmaker who represented Adamawa North in the Senate, Senator Binta Masi Garba. Thank you so much indeed for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
In your time in the National Assembly, it was better than this.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is dropping?
I think we will answer that question much later. But in 1999, when we came in, we were 12 members, women in the House of Representatives and 3 in the Senate. So the 4th Assembly had 15 of us, 12 in the House of Rep, and 3 senators. But in 2003, that is where we have the highest number of female members of the House of Representatives and that of the Senate. Because at that time, we were about 26 female members in the House of Representatives and I think about 7 in the Senate. And ironically, what the interesting aspect of it was that Kaduna and Lagos, in each of the senatorial district, a female was represented in the Federal House of Representatives. Then I was representing Kaduna South, and we thought as if each each senatorial district can produce 1 female. Then obviously, the 35% that we're now asking for will have been achieved. Because when you look at 360 and 35% of that is 108. And when you look at the Senate, you have 109, including Abuja. So when we looked at it, that was when we started pushing for the affirmative action to have a representation of 1 female member in each of the senatorial districts. Unfortunately, there is a kind of a bricks between us and attaining those achievements. And we went further even to appeal, like I, for one, appeal with the wives of the governors to make a model out of it. Even some of them, to now see, even if you can, get 1 person that you mentor, so that at least in the state, if you can just have 3, example like Kaduna, that was having 16 House of Rep members, if you can have only 3 out of 16, or in Adamawa where you have 8 House of Rep members, and if you have 3, I think we're not asking much of that. But unfortunately, I thought by now we will have seen the performance of women, the female legislators in their individual districts, which they have done well in terms of bringing about the dividends of democracy via empowering their people in their distance. It will have given them a kind of a pat and say, no, these women, we should give them a push. But unfortunately, instead of us getting more into it, we are going down. And a lot of things. Unfortunately, our election is becoming a little bit violent. In 1999, it wasn't like that. 2003, it wasn't like that. 2007, it wasn't like that.
So elections are now more violent. We thought that with the Vivas, things should be better.
Yeah, with the Viva, it should have. But obviously, the Viva just came on board now. But when you looked at the activities that are going, a lot of hurdles for the women, a lot. You talked about sentiment, on religious sentiment, on cultural sentiment, and they look at you as a woman, what are you going to do in a man's world? But what we are now saying, I have said it and I will continue to say it, then what is the essence of you sending the girl child to school? The essence of you sending the girl child to school is for her to attain some certain knowledge and be a contributor to nation building. But now, if now you looked at the political terrain and you said, no, a woman is not qualified to be there, then something is wrong somewhere.
Well, are the men saying that, or is the political class or the political system, is it saying that?
The political system obviously is working towards that. It's just you saying it with your mouth, but the index are there. If you now said, I am qualified by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as my right, which obviously the Constitution is unbiased on gender. But when it comes to the implementation, and that is where we're having an issue. If you now said, these are the criteria for me to be elected, and if I, as a person, as a Nigerian, that has gotten all the qualification, and the next point you now use, you now bring sentiment to attach to what is ought not to. But again, is that, has she performed well? If the answer is yes, then what is the issue of bringing the sentiment on ground?
What can be done to fix this? You have been in the National Assembly. You have played in the big league, in the federal politics for a long time. So you probably have seen a lot of the problem. And I see how passionate you are about this matter. What can be done to encourage not only the older women folk who are into politics, but because some of them will be disappointed because of the numbers that we see.
Yeah,
but the younger women folk also need to be encouraged, because if they see these numbers that are negative, why would they want to play?
And why do you allow us, we the women, to go and cast our vote? Because you use us to cast the vote, but you don't want us to be part of nation building.
Is there anything that can be done to fix this? Because now elections are over.
There is.
So there will be forming of government at state levels and all of that.
Yeah, the Constitution is unbiased. The implementation is where we're having an issue. Now, if you now said, I am as a Nigerian, because I asked myself, is it a crime to be a woman in Nigeria? It's not a crime. We are mothers. We feel the pain more than the men. If you don't have a good home, you can't perform even in your office.
Don't worry, I'm with you on this one.
You understand what I'm saying? But what we are saying is that a religion, which is supposed to be an umpire to bring about change in our life towards good governance, is being used arbitrarily against the gender. And that is where the big question is.
So there's a need for
the clergymen, both the Islamic and the clergymen and the Christians must look, because virtually every home you have a daughter. In every family, whether you like it or not. If you don't have a daughter, you have a sister. If you don't have a sister, you have a mother. And like in the 8th Assembly, when we're trying to see how we will include the 35% on appointive angle, I think section 147 or section 47, where it talks about, if you want to, there must be a fair representation in ministerial appointment. All what we wanted to include is the 35% affirmative action, which Nigeria affirmed her signature way back 20 years ago. But the implementation is always a problem. And what I told my colleagues, sir, is that, look, it is not about we now. It might be your granddaughter tomorrow. It might be your daughter. So don't look at the present now. Have a bigger picture.
So there needs to be internal party structures that will be cast in the Constitution also to say, because if these are not a lawful means of, if there are no lawful means of going about this, or structural ways of going about it, this may never happen. But political parties now need to put it in place. But you are a member of the ruling APC. You have a president-elect and a vice president-elect. Both of them have been in National Assembly before. You have a wife of the president-elect who was a former senator, a ranking senator at that. And so the question is, are you guys coalescing to ensure that the place of women is fundamentally placed far and above, or even the issue of equality, equity, whatever name you want to call it, so that the women can be better represented?
Equity. It's all what we ask. Equity is the word. The joy that I have for my president-elect is that he was the first governor that came in with the twinning system, which is ab initio practicing in South Africa, where you have a he as the head, then the she becomes your deputy. So the president-elect, Senator Ahmed Ashwaju, was the first person that started it. Now, when you looked at it in 1999 to 2003 and 7, the southwestern Nigerian governors, in one way or the other, had a woman as their deputy. So it's a twinning system, which all that what we're asking for. If you said, and it is happening in Adamawa now, because the present governor, ab initio, brought in a woman to be his deputy, apart from the one that was done in Plateau State, where Pauline Talem became the first female deputy governor in northern Nigeria. Then El-Rufai of Kaduna State made it sure that a woman becomes a deputy. And even the infantry now exchanged his former deputy governor to a woman, and there must be something special about the woman.
Let me take you then to the Adamawa politics, which I know that you play a major role. There's going to be a supplementary election. I mean, you are of the APC. You worked closely with Senator Binani on that election. And you've been asking for a review of the process, but INEC has come out to say there will be, on the 15th of April, a supplementary election. Is your camp ready?
I would say the camp is ready, but some of us are having some certain, we're not comfortable with it. I will give you a very good example of myself. I'm from Minchika local government, Jigalambu ward, 16 ward that makes up Minchika local government. In one of the polling units, Government Day Secondary School, Jigalambu, there were 2 polling units, and let it be on record. Polling unit 009 and polling unit 003, there was overvoting in these 2 polling units, which obviously when we were called upon, I went there. I asked the INEC staff, either they are the staff or ad hoc staff, what does the INEC law stipulate on overvoting, which obviously prior to the election, INEC on its own trying to make the public know that if you have one person over and above the beavers, obviously it's overvoting. So polling unit 009 had an overvoting of 1. Polling unit 003 has an overvoting of 2. And there and then, the staff on ground on that collation center in Jigalambu Secondary School, Government Day Secondary School, affirmed, and in the INEC form, it was nil, both APC and PDP. To my amazement, the same polling unit, 009, was included in the PDP, and 003 are going for a rerun. So now, what does section, is it section... I
think it's 51 that talks about overvoting.
That talked about the voting as amended. So are we now going for the same word that said, no, this is overvoting, and we're going for another rerun? All what we're saying, and I'm pleading with the INEC chairman, he's a father, he has sisters, he has a wife, and he has a mother. We're just pleading the women of Adamawa State and the Nigerian women. What INEC did in the issue of Ado Dogua in Kano, where they went and now checked the beavers and what have you, and it was authenticated, he won the election. What happened in Abia State? They went through the beavers, and it came that the Labour man won the election. What is so special and peculiar at Adamawa State?
What are you asking for?
What we're appealing with him is that what was done in Kano, Tudunwada Federal Constituency, what was done in Abia should be replicated in Adamawa.
I mean, the results in 16 local governments have already been announced and finalized in Adamawa State. So you are asking for a review of a result that have already been announced. The process has been concluded.
Why will you include a polling unit that has an overvoting? Why will you include it on a rerun? And why will one that has been expunged as due to overvoting included in the PDP vote? I was there.
Couldn't you have waited for a judicial review of the process? Seek a review of that process at the tribunal.
Sir, one of the polling unit, what I'm talking about, one of the polling unit for Iran was cancelled because of overvoting. Then why do you want us to go for Iran on that? I was involved. I went there. And it was cancelled.
And you have the records?
Of course we have the records.
Do your agents, do they have the copies of, have you been able to collate your results in your own situation?
Yes, because there it was cancelled. It was. We reported the matter at the situation room.
But if you look at the figures, the entire figures, which, of course, at the end of the day, what INEC is looking at is that INEC has declared that in 69 polling units, that's where the supplementary election will be happening. There is a 37,016 possibility of PVC there. But the question I'm asking is the vote margin between the PDP and the APC candidate is less than this vote. It's just about 31,000. That's why the supplementary election is happening. The PDP feels that the figure they have is unassailable. And they are confident. Is it that your party, does not believe that
our figures was mutilated? Our figures was mutilated.
Do you have evidence for that?
Of course. Because as of Sunday by 6 p.m., the issue is the Fofore local government. At that time, PDP was leading with about 25,000. But when we went to Fofore, PDP had about 7,509 thereabout, but APC was having 37,000 plus. So when you add 25,000 plus 7,500, you have about 34,000, about 33,000 thereabout. So the difference between her and us at that time it was 409,909 for APC. And PDP had 406,615. I was shocked to my amazement that in turn, the APC was having 390,000.
Maybe it was a collation of what do you think could have happened?
Only polling unit and only word remaining for that, local government was Fufore. And we saw what happened in Fufore.
What happened?
Because what do you call it? They took. When the crisis became, how I wish it can be on screen. There was confusion there, and they insisted that the man should not,
declare the result.
Declare the result, and he was taken from there to the police station. It's on record, sir. From the police station, and they brought in another different result for him too. And I can say it vividly. We saw it. We knew who are the players.
Who are those?
One of them is the police commissioner, and I stand to be corrected because when I was attacked, when I was attacked, and everybody saw what happened to me.
The video that you're talking about, the man you are talking about, have you identified, been able to confront the person? Are you sure about what you're saying?
On the Fufore, I wasn't there, but the video was there. But when I was attacked, I went and met him. We were taken away because it's not far away from. My house is just behind INEC. Going home, I was attacked. And one of the security guys said, why don't you go to INEC's office, since the commissioner of police is there and the brigade commander is there. Fortunately, when we came in, we were approaching them. That was when they now put a stop on the Sunday that they will now reconvene on Monday. And the commissioner of police looked at me and said, how sure are you? So to me, I think there were some compromises somewhere.
So you suspect the man?
Yeah, I suspect him.
It's just a suspicion. You've not been able to confirm your...
No, because I was attacked on Sunday at about at about 2 minutes to 12 midnight. The police didn't get back to me till about Wednesday that the Commissioner of Police has asked me what happened. When I was with him eyeball to eyeball, and I can say it without mixing word, I told him he was compromised.
So what are you planning?
All what we are saying, and we are all humans, and we believe this is a holy month, both for the Christians and for the Muslims, and we have conscience. Power is transient. All what we are saying, we are pleading with the INEC chairman. What they did in Kano and in Abia, they should do the same to us. What are the interests? If it is the PDP that won, fine and good. That is how God has destined it. If it is APs for crying out loud, fine and good. They should give this lady, this woman. She has been in the House of Representatives. She is still a serving senator until June, before she relinquishes, or if she gets her ticket, then okay. But what we are now saying is that what is the problem when a woman wants to aspire to the highest position and people are not comfortable?
Senator, we need to go now. So finally, you're ready? Your team is ready for the supplementary election? We go there? Or...
I am still challenging that of Minchika. But the one that was cancelled, what is the rationale of bringing it back?
Michika, Madagali, these are the areas that are the governors...
the governor is from Madagali.
Yeah.
I'm from Minchika.
Yeah.
What happened in Jigalambu ward, polling unit 009 and 003, I was involved, I went there, it was cancelled, but again, it was included.
Do you think that the election process entirely was credible?
No, to me, I was thinking, to a large extent, it was, but with what has happened in my terrain, I think it's not.
Senator Binta Masi Garba, former lawmaker, who represented Kaduna, representing Adamawa. Thanks so much indeed for your time tonight.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll dwell on the political interplay of those who are thinking that no, we do not agree with the outcome of the election, and those who believe that no, the election is okay, let's move forward, let's unite Nigeria. All of these different voices are bringing some kind of tension. But where do we go from here? We'll be hearing from the other party tonight on this matter. Stay with me, everyone. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us on the program. Now, let's talk about the outcome of this election and how the different political parties are receiving or taking the outcome. The PDP and the Labour Party have since approached the presidential elections tribunal to challenge the outcome of the election, which saw Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the APC candidate, emerging with over 8 million votes against the almost 7 million votes of the PDP and over 6 million votes of the Labour Party. Tonight, let's look at some of the conversation that have since trailed some of these. I have joining me Ayo Oyalo, a political economist and a member of the APC. Thank you so much, Ayo, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Seun, for having me. Good evening.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Nigerians.
It's been some very interesting past weeks after this election, and obviously there are a lot of people who are not happy with the emergence of Bola Tinubu, your candidate. Those who are asking that this is a time for healing.
Well,
has your side been magnanimous in victory, though?
So, the first statement that the president-elect made, you will call that extremely magnanimous. That was a hand of friendship that was extended to everybody who contested. And he also acknowledged that a lot of people didn't vote for him. But what did he say? He said, I will be your president. And there will be no reason to differentiate between those who supported him and those who did not. That is magnanimity as a leader. We all know Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He's not a neophyte in this game. This was a man who put his life on the line, so to say, when the June 12, 1993 election was cancelled. So he's a Democrat of Democrats. He understands this game. He knows clearly that you win, you lose. I remember before the final result was announced, and we understand that Lagos was lost by our party then. I know what he said. He said, it's not a big deal. Leave it. We lost it. Let's move on. That is Bola Ahmed Tinubu for you. He's a Democrat. He understands that, look, it's a game of win or lose. You remember in 2011, when we created the party ACN, this man magnanimously granted his platform to Ribadu, my big brother. We remember also in 2007 when OBJ, that's a former president, Obasanjo, was going to do anything within his power as a sitting president to humiliate, to disgrace, and to completely annihilate politically his deputy then, Vice President Atiku Abubakar, former. We all knew what happened. The AC was a party, then became ACN to make it national so that Atiku can run. But as soon as he ran and lost, what did he do? He ran away. So Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the president-elect, is a Democrat who understands that it is not a matter of life and death. So he has been magnanimous. Unfortunately, the other side have not been. And what has happened? A lot of gullible young people have been unfortunately incorporated not to understand the danger of what they are doing. Many of us who are, I told a few days ago, if you're over 40, you will understand what Nigeria went through when the June 12, 1993 election was cancelled and annulled. It took us back several years. It got to a point, I'm sure many people listening will remember the sawdust stove that we were using. It was that bad. Our lives were not safe. Military were everywhere. So when people can wake up and start going around and asking for the military to come and give them an interim government because they lost an election, which is just 4 years that you can go and reorganize yourself, it's disgraceful. It's undemocratic. It is unacceptable. And such people should be called not just to order, but the law should take its course.
So that's the reason why I ask the question of magnanimity, whether or not, when you are in a race and there is a loser and there is a winner.
There always must be.
Yeah.
There must be a loser and a winner.
The question is if there is a camaraderie and that everyone sees themselves as Nigerians and come together and say, oh, I have lost, I have won, let's pick ourselves together and see how we can work together. If there are those who believe that your party is your party and you have not been able to carry the nation along, the question will be, this election has left the Nigerian people more divided. And if you look at the election, 38% of the entire vote was what your candidate got. The lowest margin or the lowest percentage any president that has been elected since 1999 have gotten. It shows how balkanized.
It was competitive.
No. If you look at the political map, you discovered how balkanized the political map has been. In the north, the south, the north central, and every other place. There is a need, isn't it, for a reach out. Do you think your candidate could do that?
I just told you that he's not my candidate anymore now. He's now the president-elect of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We have to put that in perspective. And he has said, and I quote him, I will form a government of national competence. Which means everybody,
what does that mean?
That's what I'm doing. Every Nigerian who is competent and who can do a job will be brought. Let me remind you one thing. When Bola Ahmed Tinubu was the governor of Lagos State, he had no reason to bring in people like Ben Akabuzi onto his cabinet because they were not Yorubas and they were not Lagosians. And he's also a Christian. But what did he do? He saw competence in him. He was not obliged to bring people like Athawari into his government. He's from Delta State. But he saw competence in him. He brought him, my elder brother, Dele Alake, is from Ekiti State. So if as a governor of a state, he didn't say you must be a Yoruba man or from this place, he extended his hand. Why do you think as a president it will be any different? So my issue is, you said something about Nigeria has been very divided during this election. Who created it? We know the man that was going to churches who was saying, church, take back your country. We know the man who refused to, when he went to states that where you have Muslims and Christians, You went to Gombe, you went to Numa, you went to Kaduna, you didn't go to Kaduna, you went to Kafanchan, you went to some other state, you went to Lagos, you didn't go to the center of the city, you were going to where? So we know who deliberately exacerbated the fault lines of Nigeria. So if they did this, you cannot blame our own candidate for what people did. We know who turned the church pulpit into a campaign ground. We know who was going from churches to churches. So when they have divided Nigerians, this is the result. So we as a party, we have won an election. And many of us are Democrats. These people that I'm mentioning their names today, from the president-elect to his lieutenant, these are men who understand nationalism, who understand that Nigeria must work for all Nigerians. So Nigerians should have no worry about the kind of cabinet and the kind of government Bola Ahmed Tinubu is going to run. He's going to run a nationalistic government. He's going to run a government that will work for every Nigerian. See, let me tell you one honest truth. What do you really want as a person? Do you want to be appointed into government and then be useless? Or do you want a government who may not appoint you, but will actually work for you and it will touch your life? That is what we should ask ourselves. I know that the government of Tinubu will run in a way that it will impact positively on the lives of every Nigerian.
How do you also explain, because the opposition and the grounds on which they're challenging the election, they do not feel that the process was free and fair. They do not feel that the result reflect the election and the vote of the voters of the country. How do you describe that scenario, and how do you react to that?
Sure, I don't have a problem with you not accepting the result.
It is not me, I'm asking you.
No, I'm saying, when I say you, I mean them, the opposition. I don't have a problem with them not accepting the result. I have a problem with them trying to delegitimize our institution. You have done what a decent human being should do, which is, I didn't accept this result, and I'm going to court. Let it stop there. But when you now begin to organize your people surreptitiously on the ground, you are either marching to this place, going to the defense headquarters or the Ministry of Defense, saying let there be interim government. That is irresponsibility. We know that this democracy was achieved on the blood of Nigerian marchers, starting from Enki Abiola to his wife, to people like Ajia Suliat, to people like Nauro. So many people died. And then some people think it makes sense to say the military should come back. It is not just absurd, it is insanity. And it shouldn't be acceptable to anybody.
Please, I like not to you, for you not to use.
No. If we are thinking rightly, coming from where we are coming from,
I won't allow you to use such words as insanity.
It is absurd.
Could you just take that word back? Insanity. This is a national television.
It's a very wise decision to make.
No, don't say insanity. Could you take it back?
I won't take that insanity.
No, please take it back.
In the sense that if you are thinking straight, you will not say let's truncate democracy because I lost an election. And I told you one thing earlier on. You cannot delegitimize our institution because you lost an election. How can a candidate or his deputy sit here and say, I don't trust the court, and if you swear in so and so, then democracy has ended? It doesn't make sense. There's no way you can justify it. A democracy is a democracy. And you win an election or you lost an election, you have only one choice. That choice is to follow the rule of law. And the rule of law means go to the courts. I mean, somebody sat in this same studio, said our own 6 million was not rigged, but their 8.7 million was rigged. And you said I should say it's not insanity. Okay, it's not insanity. No. How do you explain that?
I am
taking away the word you said. I shouldn't say insanity.
No.
But for you to say it is 6 million for me and it is not rigged, but Bola Tinubu 8.7 million was rigged
would you listen to
in
me?
the same election? Makes no sense.
Just calm down, please. I don't care what you think or believe, but I'm bothered about the manner in which you express yourself on this platform. No, not fine. I mean, we are talking about the sensibilities of Nigerians. Okay. This is a family television.
Okay. We're
People, innocent Nigerians are watching, and there are some words that are not permissible on this platform. And because I'm moderating, I will say take it back.
I have taken away insanity.
Thank you for
But let me now say this to you. How did you come to the realization that an election was lost when every other candidate, apart from your candidate, won in one region and lose, and won and lose? I will give you an example. Bola Tinubu is from the southwest. He won 4 states out of the 6 states. Atiku Abubakar is from the northeast. He won, I think, 4 or 5 out of the 7 states in the north. 6 states in the northeast. Only Peter Obi won the entire Southeast, his own region. How did you now come to the realization that the election was rigged? Every other person either win in your region, some part, and lose, and then check the percentage of winning. Wherever Atiku won, he won 50%, 40%. Tinubu came second, 40% and something percent. Only Peter Obi won 80, 90% in his own region. And he is the one who is raising these fascists who are going around trying to create problems. Thank God I'm not making this up. Thank God the DSS have said people are planning to destroy the democracy that we earn from the blood of our martyrs in Nigeria. This should never be what we should even be discussing if we are thinking right in this country. We have a country to run. In just another 4 years, you will have another opportunity to present yourself if you think you are still qualified. So why should you want to completely destroy everything because you lost?
Now, the question here is that, and I'm not sure that anything has changed, is the legitimate right of any citizen to protest. So what you are not happy about is what is being said at the protest, isn't it?
So anybody can protest if they wish. Our own people have also gone out to march. Nobody said don't protest. But do you call this a protest when people march to the Ministry of Defense, or is it Defense Headquarters, and you are saying they should come and take over, that Ashwaju should not be sworn in? How does that make sense to anybody? A protest is not the same thing as trying to create a chaos in the country. A protest is not trying to delegitimize and destroy our democracy because your candidate lost. You can protest civilly and sensibly, but you cannot, under any circumstances, make comments, assertion, or anything that will jeopardize this democracy. We know how the entire world is looking to Nigeria to be able to help Africa to grow democratically. How are we going to grow if we've come this far and then you want to destroy it? And then let me tell you some other areas that people are not looking at. In terms of credibility of election, this election happens to be the most credible, and I'll tell you why. You just told me now that this is the lowest winning margin by 38%. We remember the Obasanjo organized election in 2007. We remember how the figures were so bogus because people can sit in their rooms and write results. Today with the beavers, you remember what former Senator Binta was talking about just now, overvoting. Did we ever have the word overvoting before beavers were introduced? So it tells you that there was credibility in this election. Unfortunately, for the first time, we are having people on the ballot who are undemocratic, who are fascist in their nature. And when you have fascism in your head, it doesn't matter what people do. You think you're better than other people, and you think you must win because you have gone all around churches and trying to create problems between Christians and Muslims. And that is what we are seeing today.
So how do we manage this divide? There is an obvious cleavage that you can find between amongst the regions and the peoples of this country. How do we manage? Because
I can see there
just a moment. Okay. It behoves on your party that has been elected now to be able to manage the situation, no matter what has happened, whichever way the matter goes in court. Your candidate will be sworn in at some point, and the fact remains that there needs to be a management of the nation and the people of our country.
The first thing that should have been done was for the leadership of the losing party, especially the Labour Party, because I insist on them, because the PDP is more democratic. They have been in the game for a while. They understand you can lose and win. But for people who think because they have shown up for the first time they must win, it's dangerous. So what should have happened is to let everybody know that, look, we've lost an election. We didn't accept we lost the election, but we're going to court and let it end there. But every day, maybe you need to go and check the Twitter handle of the Labour Party presidential candidate. The man is still going around as if he's campaigning. And it is dangerous. You need to stop at a time. Because you are the one leading these people on. So what should be done now?
What is he doing that you don't like?
Every day he's still going around as if he's campaigning.
Like what? What activity?
Well, so just yesterday or two, he went, did one long thread, and then he was still making very incendiary statement, and his people are latching onto it. You see, there are things when you don't need to say it. You just have to allude it. Your people will get it. And because you keep making allusion to it, you are riling them up. It's a Trumpist kind of idea. It's like a Trump system. You don't have to tell people, go and burn down the Capitol. All you need to do is give them a body language or some other way, and they will do it. So what needs to be done is for these people to call themselves to order and calm down that, look, if we burn down this country, you and I have no other country to go to. When that starts, then we can start talking about healing Then the churches, I need to talk to the pastors and the churches. I know some of them. There's a particular female minister who has gone, and you will think she's the INEC assistant, saying we reject this result. These are things that should stop. Leaders need to start talking peace, need to start talking healing, need to start telling people, look, if there are grievances, there are correct ways to handle the grievances. There are law courts. But when you go around and start saying we don't believe in the court, let's get our mandate back. How do you want to get it? By violence. Violence beget violence, and we don't want it. So the only way you can get a mandate that you think was taken from you is to go to the courts. But when you begin to say we don't trust the court, we don't believe in the court, then what are you saying? Then you're not even a Democrat in the first place. Because as a Democrat, you must believe in the rule of law. If a Democrat does not believe in the rule of law, then what is he doing being a Democrat? What is he looking for? Looking for vote. Why don't you just take a gun and kill everybody and become the president? It's as simple as that. So as a Democrat, you must understand that the rules are the rules. I mean, let me give you an example. The governor, the former governor of Osun State, still believed that he was cheated out of it. But since when have you seen the man making incendiary statement? No. He's gone to court. He won in the tribunal. He's lost now in the appeal court. He might go to the Supreme Court. That is what decent Democrats do. And if he wins, he will take his seat. And if he loses, I am sure Governor Boyega Oyetola will say, we have lost, let's get ready for another time. But when you keep going, making statements every day, still behaving like you're in a campaign mood, you're going to create problems for Nigerians. And these are what we don't want. Already the world is in a dire state. As I speak with you, I'm sure you are aware, the American banking system is on the verge of collapse. So which means there is another looming international recession. So let's face problems instead of creating problems for ourselves. These people that have lost election, I am appealing to them. Yeah. Go to the court.
So finally, Ayo, I follow some of what the comments are being in. Fundamentally, some of these guys do not believe in the capacity of your candidate to deliver, and that's why perhaps they believe that their own candidate has a capacity to do better for the situation of our country. As your final thought on the program tonight, how do you convince and what do you do to ensure you onboard these Nigerians who think legitimately that they have a better candidate other than the candidate who
First
won
and foremost, we know that democracy means the rule of law, which means the majority will always have his way, even the minority have their say. Now, what I will advise people who think they have a better candidate is to wait for 4 years, check out what Asiwaju will do in his first 4 years. If you think he didn't do well, present yourself again. However, I and 8.7 million other people know that Asiwaju delivered when it was tough as the governor of Lagos State. And we know that as the incoming president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, he will also deliver. So there's nothing to convince anybody about. All you need to do is check out the 36 states of Nigeria today. Which state has the best in terms of human capital development, in terms of infrastructural development, in terms of IGR, and in terms of every other thing? Then if you know that clearly Lagos is truly the 5th largest economy in Africa, after Nigeria, number 1, South Africa, Egypt, and I think Algeria, then you know that if this man handled Nigeria, clearly we're going to have a ball.
Thank you so much. Ayo Oyalawo, our political economist and a member of the APC. Thanks so much indeed for your time tonight.
Sean, thank you for having me.
I'd like to just put it out there and correct this notion that indeed Sir Michael Otedola was the very first governor to have a female as deputy governor, not Bola Tinubu. I like to just
Hello my wonderful people, thank you for watching, and also make sure you subscribe to this channel or to any other channel related to Okute Daily Talk or Okute News. So my people, make sure you share this message to your family and friends when I don't hear them from the horse's mouth. Until I come your way again, I still remain your one and only Okute News or OkuteDailyNews.com. Have a nice day. Bye for now. Kemesiano.